Shalom, friends. Happy Festival of Shavuot. Happy Africa Day. Africa Day, formerly known as the African Freedom Day, African Liberation Day. We celebrate it as the annual commemoration of the foundation of the Organization for African Unity on the 25th of May, 1963, 60 years ago. The African Organization for African Unity have become the African Union later on in the years. And the African Freedom Days aim to mark each year the onward progress of the liberation movement and to symbolize the determination of the people of Africa to free themselves from foreign domination and exploitation. As a preparation for this day, and during this day, many speeches have been said who raise the ideal of African unity, their idea of Ubuntu, who represent the message of Africa to the world, and yet one can clearly feel the gap between the rhetoric and the reality, between Bob Marley's songs, how good and pleasant it would be before God and man to see the unification of all Africans, and between the reality, the painful and bleeding reality we experience in the continent. Yesterday, I participated in a conference set by SERI, the Socio-Economic Rights Institute, and Kopanang, Africa Against Xenophobia, to deal again with the xenophobia issues. And usually when I speak in public forums, I would like to share with you, and these are the main principles of what I said there. Again, I was the only representative of faith-based organization. The Catholic was sick, the Methodist has a meeting, the Muslim banked. So again, and I'm like the least representative, right? Anyhow, point number one that I meant that we got to repeat the message. I said I was doing such a press conference a year ago, and one of my congregants approached me and said, Rabbi, don't you feel you are repeating your messages? Yes, I'm repeating the messages. Those messages are to be repeated because they are far from being digested. And we must unite around this message. Chaviv Adam Shenivra B'Tselem, beloved is the human creature who was created in the divine image. The message of equality. This is the message we must unite around. Second is about scapegoating. Scapegoating was discussed a lot on that meeting, on that conference. And we Jews have a leg when it comes to scapegoating, because anti-Semitism, mainly the appearances of anti-Semitism in Europe, are a form of xenophobia. In Europe, our ancestors were pushed and persecuted because they were a foreign ethnic and a foreign economic power. And I gave the example that in Russia, in Tsarist Russia, the slogan was, "Save Russia, kill the Jews." And in Nazi Germany, before Nazi Germany, in the Weimar Republic, the 20s and the 30s, the Jews were maybe 1% of the population, but they were blamed in everything that went wrong, in losing the First World War, and so on. So we know something about being scapegoated. And number three, that we don't have the possibility to lose. We simply don't have the possibility to lose. If we are losing here in South Africa, mainly here in Johannesburg, we are losing everywhere. And I know not everyone agree with me, but this is my strong conviction as somebody who came from the outside to South Africa. South Africa is a revealed miracle. And when one look, observing with a wide spectrum on the situation of democracy all over the world, China, Russia, Middle East, no other places in Africa, wherever you look, I can tell you, as much as somebody can say something clearly and with full conviction and with full determination in this world, we may not lose in the struggle for equality and human dignity here. And if we are losing here, we have no chance to succeed anywhere else. This is the last frontier. South Africa is the last frontier for the struggle for democracy and human rights, and I personally going to do whatever I can, and more than whatever I can, for this common business. This is what I said yesterday. Now, to you, I want to add on the context of Shavuot. that one cannot speak about strangers without bringing Ruth the Moabite, a foreign lady, poor, disempowered, and instead Boaz, local employer, rich, established, and the story of Ruth, which is all chesed, grace, mercifulness, love, strong human spirit beyond the labels of ethnicity and of classes. And Ruth, the Moabite, is the example that the stone that the builders refuse shall be the cornerstone. And a proof for that is the way in which Ruth and Boaz have established the royal Judean kingdom dynasty from which King David have been produced, and from that the King Messiah shall come. And I'd like to conclude with a few lines from the statement that was made yesterday by the Conference of Africa Against Xenophobia, just a few lines. So now I'm quoting the statement that was made last night, the formal conclusion of the conference. Eyes on xenophobia. So it was written by lawyers for human rights. Eyes on xenophobia. Say no to false narratives that sow division and prolong poverty. We do not have a cost of living crisis, we have an austerity crisis. We do not have a service delivery crisis, we have an inequality crisis. We do not have a migration crisis, we have a corruption crisis. We, the civil society organizations, standing together to say no more false solution and no more false narrative. Scapegoating is where appropriation blame, blame to someone to distract people from the real causes of our inequality and the dysfunctional service delivery. Scapegoating migrants will not help us to find a solution to every real problem we need to tackle. That's just a few lines from that statement. With that, I would conclude. Amandla!